Welcome to the Internet Society Singapore Chapter's webinar on TraceTogether, Device Management Application and Privacy. And as we can see from the discussion that was going on, we are a very open group and we hope to have a very good discussion today with our panel of experts who are Harish, Pillay, Global Head of Community Architecture and Leadership, Red Hat, Bryan, who is Partner and Head of TMT Practice Singapore in law firm Pinsent Masons, and Yi-Ling, Senior Fellow, Center of Excellence for National Security, RSIS NTU, and myself as the moderator and in my capacity as Program Chair for Internet Society Singapore Chapter. So I would like to now welcome our President of the Singapore Chapter, Jay, to give a welcome to everybody before I go through the details. Whoops. Yeah, Jay.
Perfect. Thanks, Ben, and welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us today. We're as part of the series of webinars and panels that we've been hosting over the calendar year 2020 and 2021. This, I guess, for this most recent management committee is I guess the last session that we're going to be hosting, at least for the current committee. And we're delighted to have such a star-studded lineup here. Ben, if you could just show that slide again with the panelists, that would be helpful. So we've got some luminaries here from the industry. We've got Harish, who's the Global Head of Community Architecture and Leadership from Red Hat, based here in Singapore. He was also on the ISOC Global board, so it's great to have him here. Bryan is familiar to a lot of people in the Singapore legal community, as well as beyond that through the nature of activities that he's got involved. He is a partner and head of TMT at Pinsent Masons, which is a well-known law firm. We've got Yi-Ling, a senior fellow at RSIS NTU, and Ben, who has very graciously offered to host this session and to moderate it, and really has done the heavy lifting and bringing it all together. So thank you for all the efforts on this, Ben. What we're doing today is hosting what we hope is going to be a lively panel on two very Singaporean online privacy issues that have hit the news recently. One being TraceTogether. Now, I think there's a good chance that 100% of everybody on this call today has been using TraceTogether in one form or another. And the other one is the device management application. You may know the latter as MOE's DMA for students' personal learning devices. So we've got some experts here that are going to talk through it, and please feel free to pose questions to our panel. I think Ben's going to start in the next slide telling you about how we can do that and some of the ground rules for today's session. So we're really looking forward to a very exciting session and a lively discussion. Now, the one thing I'll point out is after the panel formally ends, we will have our annual general meeting as well for the ISOC Singapore chapter. So for those of you who are inclined and your schedule permits, please join us for that session as well afterwards. So I don't want to stand between you and the panel, so I will hand this back to Ben. Ben, if you wouldn't mind taking over and talking us through the panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jay. Our agenda is that I'll introduce some of the facts of the situation before inviting the panel to answer a couple of questions. And then we'll also have a time for Q&A where everybody here who is in the group, you can participate. If you want to ask a question, you can raise your hand or you can send me a private message in the chat. Please hold your questions till the Q&A. We are going to record this presentation, the discussion, but not the Q&A for your privacy, okay? And if you can choose to ask your questions anonymously. The public chat is you do ask the questions to me directly if you want to be anonymous. So please keep your questions short and concise, and we'll moderate. I will moderate because we have a limited amount of time, because we're not going to stay here the whole night. So we are going to start the panel discussion, and Jay has very kindly introduced all the panel members. And since it's a discussion, we're not going to be staring at a bunch of slides. Instead, we'll be staring at one another. Invite all the panelists to start up their cameras. If there's only one thing that I want to share on screen, I would like to share the blog post by Harish, in which he sets out the timeline for what has happened. And if you go to our Internet Society website, we also have a full list of all of the news articles and commentaries that have been published, including Harish and also by Yi-Ling, about how originally, for those who are not aware, TraceTogether is our contract tracing solution in Singapore, the technology that is available as an app and also available in a token. And originally in 2020, when it was rolled out, Harish was also part of the team that did the teardown, and some of our other participants here, like Roland, were also involved in the teardown. And at that point in time, there was an assurance that the data will only be used for contact tracing. And in January, it was clarified in Parliament that if there's criminal charges against a person, then the TraceTogether contact might be retrieved, which then the Minister for Smart Nation had to explain why this was different from what he had promised earlier. And so there was a lot of commentary that said, should this be allowed? Should this not be allowed? Should there be, are we on a slippery slope? The minister said that he had sleepless nights thinking about it. And so there's a very good blog post, very good links at our Internet Society website if you have some spare time to read up. But this is not a reading time. I want to invite the panelists then to start off this because the big question that is on everybody's mind is that how does this affect privacy? But yet we are seeing from the different discussions that there are different perceptions of privacy, whether it's from a legal point of view or from a technological point of view, or whether what the society thinks that privacy should be. So can I throw it to the panel, because we've got lawyers and we've got technologists on, what do you see is the meaning of privacy in Singapore? And shall we start? We've got two lawyers here, so.
So maybe I'll start.
Yeah.
So Ben, you've correctly pointed out that when we talk about privacy, there are usually three different schools of thought on what privacy should be. One school of thought is, I saw it in the movies, and so this is what privacy is. So entirely Hollywood-based. The second school of thought is, I've actually thought about it, and I think it should be this. And the third school of thought is, this is what the law says. And as a lawyer, obviously my role is to cover that third part. And so I'll disabuse everybody of the notion straight away. We do not have privacy in Singapore. What we do have is data protection, specifically personal data protection. Personal data protection says that for certain classes of data that is personal data, we will protect that data. But there are a whole bunch of rules around that. Privacy, in some sense, is protecting personal data, but it could be more. So for instance, privacy will cover the right not to be disturbed. Okay, so for instance, if you operate an email account, somebody keeps bugging you with spam messages offering, great investment schemes and sexual enhancement tools. Privacy will say, leave me alone, stop bugging me. But data protection will not cover those situations. So, yeah, in a nutshell, as I said, there are three different schools. From a lawyer's point of view, we focus on what laws we have and what the law says.
Can I jump to the next lawyer? Yi-Ling?
I concur with my learned brethren. No, just kidding. I'm sitting facetious. But no, yeah, of course, we don't have a black letter law of privacy, and in part that stems from having inherited, as part of our legal history, a system that does not recognize as well, like this thing called privacy. which is often somehow classed as a Western concept. The right of autonomy, the right to be left alone. I think, Bryan, you said the right not to be disturbed. So my sort of like analog to that is the right to be left alone, the right to be, not have your communication interfered with, the ability to sort of like close the door on the world. So all this is very conceptual and very abstract. And we have the PDPA. We also have, the common law of breach of confidence, where the law recognizes that if I share information with you, with the expectation that both everybody understands that this should be confidential and kept private and confidential, and in the event that promise and the accompanying agreement is broken, there is recourse under the law for breach of confidence. But that refers to, like, information about yourself, commercial information. And we have the law of private nuisance, where if someone is actually physically interfering with your enjoyment of your premises, or noise or intrusion, you have that. And then there's also the thought of emotional infliction or emotional distress. So we have a hodgepodge, a mishmash of things, and we also have the Protection from Harassment Act as well. So we seem to be circling around this nebulous, I don't know what I'm thinking about, Vanta black hole. We got the word privacy, because you really can't see what it is. And I think when I heard Minister Balakrishnan stand up in Parliament and say, "We respect your privacy," my first question was, what exactly do you mean by that? Because in my mind is, you have made this statement, in the public domain, and you have categorically stated that in undertaking contact tracing for purposes of, pandemic response, your privacy will be expected. And I was like, Minister, what do you mean by my privacy? Can you please explain to me? And of course, that was never explained, because there isn't an explanation to give. But I'm thinking, you have raised this, and this is a conversation which you have started the nation upon, and we have to walk that road now.
For better or for worse, we seem to be
This is going to be, yeah.
Seems to be opened up.
That is my conception of I'm looking at the negative space of what privacy is, and this is what we have, because we don't have a core, we don't have a center, we don't have the European sort of like the autonomy of the person. We don't. There's no privacy of personhood. It's a different concept. So culturally, we don't have that. But then, I don't believe it's not an unfelt and unrecognized concept for people in Singapore, for let alone anywhere in the world.
Great, thanks, Yi-Ling and Bryan. And as usual, when we have two lawyers giving us their views, it's usually quite depressing. So I asked Harish to come in.
Please save the day, Harish.
This is Harish. This is not FOFMA, by the way. He is here under a pseudonym.
Yeah, I'm on a pseudonym. I want privacy, so it's not FOFMA. Okay. Anyway, I think this is part of the bigger problem that we face. An understanding of what privacy or privacy is a spectrum, and because it's a spectrum, there isn't enough of a conversation or expectation in terms of what does it mean to have my data kept separately, because I'm part of a family and I want my family data to be kept separate, but my address information is posted somewhere in the phone directory, which actually links back to my family, because the phone, is there a phone directory these days? But maybe not, wherever, right? So it is a very difficult concept. I think very few of us get a full grasp of what it is. And in the particular instance of this tool that we're talking about, my focus was purely on the fact that when it was launched, that was the biggest cry about, hey, we're going to respect people's right to go wherever you want. We're not going to trace where you are. We just want to know if you were exposed. We want to be able to get the information and get that sorted out. And because it was repeated multiple times, so the sense is that, hey, this device is fine. And it was a necessary thing, and it's still a necessary thing today in order for us to address this problem all of us face. And so from my perspective, I got on board on that bandwagon because, that's what you say, Mr. Minister, and so this is what you're doing. And we needed to look at the code to see whether that's indeed what is happening and so on. And my personal perspective was that I'm satisfied that it does respect that portion of it. There are a lot of other things it doesn't touch, but that portion, yes, it respects that. Then subsequently, for us to have a situation months later to say otherwise, that became a challenge, because I do remember raising this as a possible thing that we need to think about, for a very simple reason, because I did my national service in the police force many, many, many years ago. And one of the things that the person who was teaching us criminal procedure code and all that in the police academy was this notion of specifically that section on CPC, chapter section 20, I believe 20. It is. Yeah, he kept saying, you as a police officer, you can go as an inspector of police. I have the right to, probably go search and all that if I have a search warrant and all that. But I cannot go on a fishing expedition. I cannot go into a place and find out other things. I may have received a warrant to search because there may be suspicion of a drug consumption, for example. Now I go in and the magistrate gives me the warrant. I go in and then I find there's other things, like maybe there are guns there, or maybe there is pornography, or maybe there's whatever. I cannot therefore now say, okay, I'm going to take all this other stuff because I went in on that one premise. So fishing expedition is really what that was all about. So I did mention this, and unfortunately that kind of fell on deaf ears, for what it's worth. So my challenge was that when this finally broke, saying, oh, this is the case, I had to, I felt that the opinion that we provided was not considered, because a certain track was being undertaken. This is what we need to do, because we need to solve a existential problem. Totally agree. But when you're highlighting issues that could creep up, it was kind of either ignored or brushed aside, or let it be. Hopefully nothing happens. So that was my problem with that. So right now, from my perspective is, as a techie, as an engineer, I know what this can do, and I'm still hopeful that we will not abuse it. And I think I am the optimist. I've always been an optimist. So I think we will not be abusing it. But this is where we need to have something that I can then peg into and say, this is the reason why I feel it will not be abused. So that's one of the things I've been talking about, is the idea of a digital bill of rights. We need to state what are all the rights that we as a citizen in this country, in a digitally enabled country, I have my rights. Yeah, I got certain rights in the Constitution. Yes, great. But what about in the digital space? What are my rights? As Yi-Ling, we were saying about people keeping private information private and so on. Like in Europe, they have this thing about right to be forgotten.
Yes.
Now that's a form of privacy. Now, should that be incorporated into this Bill of Rights of sorts? We need to have a global discussion about it, and then we try and find how do we make this happen for everybody. So that's where I would put my 2 cents out there.
Thanks, Harish. In fact, there's 2 things I want to draw on. One is that, yes, I think we all, at least most of us here, would agree that TraceTogether does serve an important function, and we do want it to continue to serve that function, which is contact tracing. And that's really a big part of the whole pandemic response that we have. So I think we do have that. And we do appreciate, let's put on record here, we do appreciate all the work that GovTech has done in developing TraceTogether.
Yeah.
I totally,
No, for sure, for sure.
That's for sure.
I mean, it's a solidarity. It was a solidarity move. It was. Let's be.
We really appreciate.
Here, let's support this.
And I think in the light of it, like what you're saying about the Bill of Rights, what we're trying to do is trying to have a a solution to this controversy that will, so that we can move past the controversy and be able to still have a trace together without, well, you can't undo the controversy, but then to what can be made better. Which then brings me to, you raised a very important point, which is also that the CPC has been around since the time you were in national service, which has been quite a while. So,
Last century.
Yeah.
Yeah, literally
So
last century.
I've been lecturing on the Criminal Procedure Code for a really long time as well. So we know that there's always been a right to think. What do you say to people who say, but no, we should have known, police always have this right? And the people who also say, I'm being devil's advocate here, right? People say, well, we should have known what police always have the right. And also the other thing, which is, if you have nothing to fear, why do you, are you so worried about police?
I have a comeback for that one.
Yes, go.
I have a comeback. So many years ago, I was speaking at a conference, and at the end of the conference, this was about internet security and all that and privacy. And a person in the audience raised a hand and said, and asked me the question, I don't have anything to hide. I'm actually, I'm a good person. I do all these things. I'm above board and all that. And why should I care about privacy? So I had a very simple answer for her, and it was a cheeky answer, essentially. And I said, it happened to be a lady, right? And this is a public forum, so I thought it was safe. So I said, I know that each one of us in the event had to go to the restroom that day. Why is it that when we go to the restroom, we close the door? I know exactly what you do. I know how you do what you do. I know why you do what you do. But why do we close the door? Oh, I want some sense of privacy. Yeah, that's right.
There you go.
That's what you want. And so how do we then marry the two? Why hiding it? Why? There's nothing to be shy about. So then I also highlighted, hey, look at it. The animals around, dogs and cats, they go and do whatever they do wherever they have no sense of privacy or in that sense shame for that matter. Is it because it's shame that therefore you want privacy? And so there are many things to think about.
I will never think about privacy the same way again, Harish.
Thanks, Harish.
Yeah, thanks for that, Harish.
That mental image.
Yeah.
Well, I know what you did. I know what you did last weekend.
I'm a bit stumped. Yeah. Yes.
That TraceTogether takes on a whole different slant with that example.
Yes. Good. Thanks, Jay. Yeah.
I think strangely, especially for me, it was and I'm trying to sort of like put in my mind the sequence of events that I had been personally following, because I think in April or May of last year, I think it was May last year, I was in an IPS panel about this whole issue of TraceTogether, surveillance and all that, and I think the issue of trust was brought up. There was some debate around what trust means. And then, so things progressed. I was paying attention to it because I still am, and Ben as well, is part of this very long paper on trust in government and in tech, in the context of contact tracing. So it was a lot of introspection about, yes, I have concerns about my data. I have concerns about who is holding on to it, whether it will be safe. So there's two concepts here, like data privacy and data security, which is a little bit different. Is my data secure? It's like, how is it being locked up? Is my data private? How is it being managed? How is it being used? And then I recall that a lot of messaging from GovTech, Harish's teardown, which I was just saying to him earlier on when we were doing our warm up and our tune up and our sound check and everything. Why wasn't it more widely publicized? Because it was only when I was hunting in my own, researching the point about the open source and everything, and then I came across this GovTech press release, and I was like, okay, cool. And then I cross-checked it against, has it been published in, like, say, a national newspaper? No. And I'm like, oh, this is a comms fail. This is a major comms fail. So what became more important for me was, why was the communication so incoherent at that point? What were they trying not to sort of like call attention to? So everything progressed as it did. We got to 78% because, without TraceTogether, you can't go and live your life, essentially, right? So on 31st December 2020, I said, fine, I think this is where I draw the line under, whatever I'm researching on, and I can kind of put a coda to this. Then 4th Jan happened, and first I laughed in disbelief. I actually cracked up in disbelief, and I'm like, you gotta be kidding. Everything we said you shouldn't do, you did. And friends who work in this yes, May-Ann, entirely lah. I just had a look just before we got on at the multi-ministry task force. One very significant ministry is not there. It's not there. MHA is not in the list. I mean, second minister for MHA is there lah, for manpower, but then why weren't they invited to the table? So I was like, for me, that was just a little bit strange. So 4th Jan happened, and then all this, and then I reacted with 2 commentaries, both on slightly different topics around the same thing. One written with my colleague Muhammad Faisal, who I believe is listening in, bye-bye, and the other one written with Manoj Harjani, because we were all kind of like raging and laughing in disbelief, and body blow, backpedal, policy. But I'm like, again, and so I cannot believe in it, and I'm sure it's not, there's no malice. This is really don't know how to talk to each other. And then you own goal, spectacular own goal, fantastic. That's like,
So now that we have identified these issues, what do you think are the next steps going forward? Besides, everybody should learn to talk to one another. And if you find yourself having sleepless nights, maybe you should tell the public before the public asks you in Parliament.
there's gaps in the story. Am I I'm just being forensic but there's gaps in the story. I think some things don't line up, but
okay,
it happened. We can't change things, and for me, it's a bit of a shame because, and I know I echo what you were saying about lauding GovTech for the work they did, because up until 3rd Jan 2021, the rest of the world was looking at us saying, "Wow, Singapore got it right, man, gold standard."
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Tragic, no. So it was really, I want to, hysterically funny, at the same time, so disappointing.
So, moving forward, what can we do? Is it a Bill of Rights? Is it something else? An ombudsman? Is the law that's been passed, is it going to assuage people's concerns? And we got another lawyer on the call, with a faded background.
There's a law reform committees thing as well, right? They want to sort of like patchwork, and another piece of the patchwork to the privacy, sort of like a rigmarole.
So some people are saying already that they are happy with the passing of the law. Other people are still concerned. What Harish is promoting a Bill of Rights? Anybody else? Any other ideas?
I mean, you just look at this debacle, and then you look at the DMA, which is the other part of the talk that we were looking at the session here. That is another direction itself. So, is that really necessary to do it that way? The digital management, whatever A stands for,
application,
device management application. Yeah, I mean, it's like it's essentially one side of the house of the government does not know what the other side is doing, and the debacle of one. How is it? And so now, what I'm looking forward to see at some point in time is that a bunch of students are going to have this thing installed in their device, their laptops, and something breaks, or someone somehow something happens, and that particular laptop's content or video is being streamed from the person's home.
I think it's happened already in another country.
Yeah, it happened in other countries. I totally agree with that. But what I suspect is that it's going to happen here.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'll say, "Oh, we didn't, really think of it, or we didn't realize that, or this and that, or this is the child's fault, or this is the parents' fault, or this is the school's fault." And so finger pointing will happen, unfortunately.
So that brings us segues very nicely to part 2 of our discussion, which is about device management application.
Sorry, Ben. Can I jump in with a few things? I think.
Oh yes, Bryan, you jump in.
I mean, some observations based on what both Yi-Ling and Harish said. And so one, as Yi-Ling pointed out, how in the world did this thing escape all these politicians looking at, and these government people look at this on both sides of the aisle, okay? Let's be fair. I mean, these were assurances that were provided in Parliament.
Yes.
Presumably, people are attending Parliament sessions and are listening to what's happening. It really took a long time, you're right, before somebody said, hey, hang on, we didn't cover this law that we had. And I think that also tells us one lesson, that our politicians need to up their digital skills, right? They tell us, you guys need to upskill, you guys need to prepare for digitalization. Our politicians need to prepare for that too. They need to be aware of how the digital world is going to affect things that they do and things that affect us. And these things shouldn't have passed really that quickly under their noses. Somebody should say, hey, hang on, there's a CPC here, and stuff like that. So I think that's one takeaway that we need to remember. The second thing I need to point out was TraceTogether is essentially a voluntary program, right? They decided, and this is a good decision, not to force people to take these tokens, right? And so they needed to encourage you and provide those assurances, the tear downs, so on and so forth, right? And so when there's something that's voluntary, that's where those assurances come up from. I know we're going to segue into the DMA. The big difference is that DMA is not voluntary. Okay, they are. It sounds like it's going to be imposed on everyone. So that voluntary element is now taken away. If this were a private organization that's organizing that, then the question would be, are you allowed to state as part of your terms and conditions of the use of your product to compel people to accept whatever data protection exceptions that you have mandated, right? But then again, it brings us to the bigger issue that whether government is subject to data protection principles. And again, that's a mixed messaging along the way. So that's the second point. The third point I wanted to point out is this. This particular TraceTogether incident is disturbing because it shows the government's, well, what looks like a change of its position. And that doesn't look very good if Singapore were to be subject to a European adequacy decision.
Yeah. It would fail massively.
Yeah. If you've been following what's happening on the European front, this guy called Trent brought an action, and he basically said that, look, the US safe harbor doesn't work. Why? Because a chap called Mr. Snowden says that the government is not even keeping to its own limitations. It is arbitrarily invading privacy, and so we should not trust US legislation to protect data protection, and hence we now will not give the US an automatic ability to transfer data. Now, seeing that the transfer of data from Europe to Singapore is important, I'm afraid there might be an impact on this particular front if the Europeans were actually asked to make a decision. And so that's kind of the wider scale behind these things. It's not, so we haven't really quite gone past this, I think. I think there's still, quite a number of issues around there that kind of affect these issues, but at the same time, these issues will also affect other things, and I think most immediately the DNA issue, which we're going to talk about.
Bryan, that's really, really
Yeah.
incisive. Thanks for putting that down. I think we definitely need to have all these things in mind because of the impact is really huge. And okay, so now I think we do segue to DMA. And for those who were wondering what is DMA, because of the pandemic, all of the Singapore school children had to do home-based learning, at which point it was discovered that for many families, they don't have a laptop, or is in the new jargon, PLD, personal learning device, to do their home-based learning on. Because you need a PLD for the HBL. if you have a PLD
You
for
have
the
a DMA
HBL,
installed. Whether you
that's
like it or
provided by the MOE to do a DMA.
yeah, the MOE give you the PLD for the HBL, so they need the DMA on the PLD to give you the HBL.
In a HDB apartment.
Ben,
Or
I
you can
think
sell
that
your
deserves,
property.
a quick remix
Yeah.
with a something baseline to it. It's going to go viral.
Yeah, so
Ben, I
You'll be
hope
on
you recorded this
TikTok,
so you
yeah.
can sample it.
you'll be
There
on
we go.
TikTok, yes.
I
So
recall-
actually, it's in
Sorry,
response
sorry.
from a network engineering point of view, and there's so many network engineers around here, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. If you want to make sure that your network is safe, you need to have some device management system running on the user devices or some way of doing remote access. So if in case you want to do remote help desk, right? I mean, some common things like TeamView, great, that you might want to have to run your network, which is absolutely understandable in a corporate network. But then when you roll it out in the schools and to students, and these are laptops that are being owned by the families, is it by EduSave? Or is EduSave your own money, or is it the money that the government gave you? Whose laptop is it anyway? And how come there's a DMA there which controls what you can do with the laptop, controls the laptop when you are using it? And then there's also, as we started to talk about, there are already cases in the US, already 2 cases where the laptops that had DMAs installed on them, somebody switched on the webcam when the laptop was in the students' bedrooms and had photos of the students in their bedrooms. In one case, the county had to do a settlement of several $1 million because there were 56,000 pictures of students in their
Wow.
bedrooms.
That's just beyond shocking, lah.
Yeah, and you got to realize that
Shocking.
who's got access to the DMA is
Yeah.
this. Yeah, so with all these great questions, so what do you all think about the DMA?
The privacy issue aside, I think what for me had to it stopped me in my tracks was another organ of government is rolling this thing out. It was presented as a fait accompli.
Yep,
You
it
all
does.
do this. Dear parents, okay, I'm not a parent. Dear parents, but a parent showed me this, slightly orange. Please refer to this PowerPoint deck slides to understand what is going to happen with this DMA. So it was like a 10 kind of like slide deck explaining in fairly bad English what this DMA thing is and when it'll take place and who will apply to. And I'm like, you're not reading the writing on the wall. Y'all don't remember what happened last week or 2 weeks ago. The country is still raging, about their conceptual privacy being compromised, and you do this. So Harish, what you were saying about one side of the house not talking to another, I mean, this is classic. So, the huge irony is we are so set on, transforming digitally, which is actually kind of scary. And the levels of incompetence, and I'm almost gonna, I want to venture I'm going to venture as far to say willful ignorance, or this is someone else's problem. It is troubling. It's almost comical. It is actually comical. I see all the IMDA, the go digital things. It's like your young person putting his finger or putting her finger on the pulse of like a transparency into the future. And why are they not talking about cybersecurity as well? Why is only one small agency in their whole ministry talking about both things at the same time? Where is the coherency? Are we just kind of like cherry picking what my agency is concerned with? But no, if you're talking about digital transformation, this is a networked phenomenon. We are all points of vulnerability.
Maybe I add a view because I had enough over the years insights and viewing and seeing how the different agencies work and so on, and then having conversations with some of the people who are leading them. One of the things a lot of them concurred was that there is this notion of a fiefdom. It is my patch, I'll do what I want, and I'll do it because I am answerable to a certain chain of command. And then the other patch, who can also help, will therefore not be involved because suddenly you don't look good in terms of your hierarchy and so on. Which so this is something that somebody in I will say who it is. Which organization it is? GovTech. GovTech was challenged with that particular constraint. They were seen as, in many ways, the upstart, the startup within government that is going to come to me. I am the ministry. I am this entity that's been around for decades, and you're telling me how to do what needs to be done. Who are you? I hire my own people to do my own thing. So it's unfortunate, but that's sadly the reality. And that probably contributes to some of these incoherent policies, left pocket not knowing what right pocket is doing, which is, unacceptable if we want to continue. To be continue to say we are a smart nation. No, we are not. We absolutely are not. I give you one more example just for that. It drives home a particular point. I had to go meet with a particular minister in his office. I happen to be his office. And for all that we say about smart nation, the office reception, although I had a room to go and meet with the minister, the office reception person did not have anything that says what room is. There was no reservation. There was no online. It was a book where you write in which room, what time, by whom.
Scribing.
And this, right, there was this elderly gentleman who was probably hired to do whatever that he was trying to do, which was incredible. When I saw that, it's like, okay, never mind. I will zip and I will just highlight that this was something that I saw for myself. So, which is sad. And this is within the last 2 months, okay?
Anyway. Bryan.
Yeah, can I ask, because I've only seen the public announcements on the TMA, but have you seen anything in the realm of assurances from both a cybersecurity and privacy or data protection point of view?
I think there was some muttering a few days ago from some assurance that the thing can be turned off. When
I posted the articles here. I'll zoom in so you can see better.
Oh, I remember that petition.
So there's a petition, and then
there's a petition here.
Basically, application does not track personal information, says MOE. That's in Channel News Asia. Will not check student locations. Of
course not.
Student location, right?
Okay.
Then Singapore refutes suggestions that it tracks personal data. Then MOE says that it will allow students to switch off the thing after school, which...
Why wasn't this information?
No, because it wasn't decided until then, I think.
Okay.
I don't think it was decided.
Well, one of the $20,000 questions I would have is, so it still does have search history, and will that presumably then fall under the realm of the CPC should that ever come up again?
I would think that if you got some more like radicalization cases like the one that happened today, I want to thank Natalie Pang for bringing it to my attention.
Yeah, I read about that kid hanging out outside Bryan Abbas synagogue.
Instantly, first thing you go and do is you're going to use the DMA to go and search history.
Yep. So at least, well, I guess this time nobody has said they're not going to use that, and so the assumption is they can.
Well, thank goodness they didn't say they're not going to use it, right?
Well,
then there'll be even more problem.
More controversy. Look, guys, the Pandora's box is open,
Yep.
We're just waiting to see what crawls out next.
But first, just want to put on record so that we are grateful to MOE for trying. Because I know they tried this because parents were concerned that you put the laptop in the hands of the children and then the children start wandering off to, unsavory sites, or they start doing all kinds of things during school hours when they're supposed to be doing HPL, and basically the parents are too busy to monitor them. So the school provided a solution. Thank you MOE for trying. So now we have to tell you that this wasn't the solution. I think many people could have shown that this, if they just found out about 10 years ago what happened in the US, there is a problem.
Sorry to jump on top, but I just
Yes, Roland.
missed the purpose of the DMA. Is that in fact the purpose, to deal with unsupervised kids getting themselves in trouble with a laptop and a network connection?
Yes.
Okay. And that couldn't be,
Yeah.
that couldn't be achieved by simply either whitelisting or blacklisting what they could do?
Or by locking down what you can install, like making it user.
So,
Yeah.
so this is a fundamental, principle in the EU law that, and in fact, there's jurisprudence on it, that if a objective can be achieved by prior restraint in corporate or other networks, in preference to a surveillance-based approach, then data protection, data minimization by design means that the controller is legally obliged to use filtering instead of surveillance. Surveillance is a
But I think I thought the problem around that was there were going to be devices that were first personal devices, so not issued by the schools. And second, some of that access would be from the home networks.
I'm now going to segue into the Q&A because
Which is, yeah.
I welcome Roland, who's our ISOC Expo. Thanks for the question, Roland. Yeah, so yes, I think there is a second problem, which is that some people are going to be using their own laptops because they don't want to get a personal learning device under the school system, because there's an option. They can say, if you don't want to use your EduSave to buy a thing, you can, and you already have an existing laptop, then you can use your existing laptop, but you must install the DMA.
This is
Yes,
a,
that's right.
I don't think that changes my question. The question I'm asking is, could the objectives of the program have been achieved without any surveillance? Just applying the EU standard, that if you can achieve the objectives that are the legitimate objectives that are being pursued without surveillance, then it is immediately illegal to use surveillance. You can only use surveillance if there is literally no other way to do it. So I'm asking the question. I'm not familiar with the program.
Yeah, so technically, can you achieve the purpose of keeping kids off unsavory sites? And if you do it, if it's a computer which is issued by the ministry, I think that would be straightforward.
There are no locals to do that. If this was issued by the ministry, it's ministry property. They could format the drive to, you
could set up the user rights. Yes, I agree with you on that, Roland. And then now the big question is,
complication was with the personal devices.
should they? Maybe they shouldn't let personal devices be used. Let everybody just have a standard one, a standard Chromebook or something.
Yeah, then that would have been a rollout cost, right? So, and I think they may not be able to roll it out that quickly.
But at this, there is a rollout cost because EduSave is being used. There is still money being spent on having.
I think
one of the things one of my colleagues whose son was going to the junior college, and when he got the letter, he sent me the letter, and basically when I read that, he basically when sending the mail to me, he put in the subject line, says "Big Brother Singapore style," and he was wondering why on earth is my son's laptop needing to have anything. He's going to work around all of these things. He's going to work around every single blockage that is going to be put inside there. He's going to do whatever he wants to do. And by putting this thing in there, it just gives an additional target for me to whack. And then, is there a consequence if you broke it? So basically, this is a conversation I'm having with my colleague. He says, what would the consequence be if he deliberately broke it? His son breaks it. Now, he didn't have a straightforward answer. I mean, this is installed on their laptop, to be installed on his laptop, not the one that is provided by the school. What does that mean? If I break it, do I keep all the pieces and thank you very much? Or what happens?
Yeah, I think that is not publicly known, right? What is the consequence? Is it going to be
this break? You're talking about physical damage. But by break, do you mean physical damage?
I don't think Harish means physical damage, right? You mean like
a workaround.
breaking through.
Yeah.
Breaking through,
Okay.
yeah.
It's a
circumvention.
built
Yeah,
from a standard, so it's a device built from a standard image. It can be re-imaged trivially. There's no cost there.
Are they going to block them from the home-based learning system then? Which
So
then
that,
has an
so
impact
that
on
was the question I was
education.
getting to, because I was just thinking through the consequences of the ministry issued versus personal device. Who's accountable? If the expectation is, if the problem is that parents can't supervise, and fair enough, they can't, right? That's a full-time undertaking. And so the thing is being outsourced to MOH, okay, fine. And so the question now comes, what if it's a personal device? Can MOH reasonably require that an access control tool be installed on the personally owned device? I think the question answers itself, which is if the parents want MOH to control the child's access during the school day, then it is the parent's choice to install the tool. At that point, the question goes away, or the question is resolved. Now, it's not, does the MOH get to compel a privately owned device to have the thing installed on it? It's, if, dear parents, you would like us as a service to you as part of distance learning to provide you with the tool we use for everybody else to make reasonable attempts to control misuse by your child, then here is a tool that you may choose to install free of charge. I think that solves that problem. And I think it also solves this one.
Yeah, well, the other part of it was that the teachers wanted to be able to check whether the students were paying attention during the lesson.
And is that a legitimate objective?
Yeah, that becomes another very interesting question, because it's a philosophical question, it's a pedagogical question, it's a societal question. Yeah. I am aware that we are coming up to 8 o'clock. Let's wrap up in about 5 minutes. I think this is a great discussion. We can go on for hours and hours and hours, but you know, let's not. But let's keep the discussion going. And I think that we can. There's a lot of fantastic stuff in the chat. If anybody wants to address anything
parallels in the chat. This is like a parallel universe in the chat. There's a lot of stuff going on, which is great.
Yeah. So anybody want to address anything in the chat? Please go ahead. Or any other points that we haven't mentioned, because I think this is great. I do want to continue this discussion and debate, and I think we'll set up a discussion thread after this, and everybody who's still interested can join in the discussion thread. I'll post it on our various on our website so that we can continue the discussion, because there's a lot of good stuff happening in the chat here. Suggestions. I like Roland's points about having other means of reaching the same objectives.
Well, I think part of the challenge is that as what Roland was suggesting, the other means to achieve the objective, it's probably deemed too difficult, and they're trying to go the shortest path to a particular thing. Or just put a piece of software, then be done with it.
Yeah.
Not knowing that opens up a
path of least resistance, lah.
Yeah, exactly.
They thought now.
Yeah. I mean, let's put it this way. I mean, I have my mobile phone. We do have, in the organization I'm part of, we have a choice. I mean, although this phone belongs to me, the organization pays for my phone usage. Now, what was asked for, and it was voluntary from an employee perspective, whether this device should be managed by the organization. And because the way this particular device, the way Google does their device management, there's a entirely separate section just for that purpose, just for device management, access to stuff that is provided by that model. And I can completely disable it and be done with it, and nobody will be none the wiser. But by enabling that, it helps for me one particular thing, which is if the device gets lost, I can get the organization's IT to do the remote. But that was primarily triggered because we had, at that time, going into China was a challenge, and so we needed to make sure that anybody who goes into China has something that we can control. Otherwise, assume your device is compromised. And so that was the thinking behind that, some of the rationale behind that. So the same thing comes here. What do? These devices, the majority of operating systems running on laptops, unless other than I believe the Chrome laptops have a means to have a separate setup just for that to be secure. The rest don't have it. plain and simple. Or it's not available in a manner that has the same kind of impact that the Chrome laptops have.
In fact, my Windows laptop from the office has, I do
remote
I
one.
don't know. Yeah, it is definitely controlled by the office.
I find the claim puzzling. There's been parental control software around for at least 2 decades. I would imagine there were parental control tools for literally every combination of hardware and operating system out there. So
No, it's always been there. It's just that people could have easily worked around it. So there was never a problem to break it if you know what to do, right? That's the given. We have to assume it will be broken. The question here is when it is broken.
That's true anyway.
I know. It is the obvious statement to make, right? It's the obvious statement to make. And where is the accountability at that point in time? And you expend all the energy, the cost, the effort, the thinking, the elbow grease and the jaw grease and whatever to justify something. And when it is broken, oh, sorry, we tried. Okay, I am reminded of something that happened in 1996 or 1995. I forget when exactly. Yeah, it was a while back. This was when the Ministry of Culture, George Yeo, announced that we're going to have internet censorship, and we're going to censor 100 websites because people are demanding for that. Playboy.com and so on and so on and so on, right? And I was at that point when that announcement was made. I happened to be attending an event by Netscape. Yeah, remember, it's from the dark days. Netscape. This was in San Francisco. So there was this huge screen, and one of the things they were showing the browser or something, and there was this first story that came up: Singapore to censor the internet or something like that. And I'm sitting in the audience. I looked at it, it's like, say what again? I mean, it was embarrassing. It was embarrassing from and only 100 sites is a light touch. So is that the same thing in this particular case? And what's happened to that one? I don't know. I mean, it's still there. It's not that it's disappeared. So this is going to be another one of those things that's going to be rolled out.
The list is growing, Harish. It's a gazetted list.
It is. And we need to have somebody to keep helping to publish it as well.
So that was one of those examples where you need to be seen to do something. So you do something symbolic,
it's a symbolic measure.
Yeah, seen to be doing, exactly.
Which in a way, this seems to have been also a symbol. I mean, I can see there are parents in the chat also who were actually quite positive about having some device management put in. Because, I mean, even myself as a parent, I think, I would like to have parental controls. And then the other part, but of course then there's the risks that came with having this thing, and then all the things that have gone wrong with device management applications on kids' laptops. So, and of course the timing being really
the timing was incredible.
But
the timing was incredible.
To be fair, the thing has been rolled out. The device management has been in the works for months. So I think they just
but the problem is not really with parents who want device management controls, right? It's the problem with parents who say, actually, I don't want that. I trust my kid. Yeah, then it's that whole pinfall scenario, right? You try to hide your TraceTogether. What can you do about this? Try to break it. Take your kid out of government schools, homeschool the kid.
The child.
I mean, crazy decisions. I hope people will
give them a phone.
Decisions. Yeah.
Then we'll have a really different digital haves and digital have-nots, So
I mean, I can imagine that there are families out there with one personal device that everyone in the family is sharing.
Yeah, there are plenty of them, and that was one of the things that we discovered at that webinar that we had some time ago with the it is quite shocking to see, especially one-room flats, for example. If you go there, you will see, having another screen kind of thing is going to be hard. So they have a TV there, okay. But whoever, the kids, they have the phone, and the phone is how they were getting their education from the school. That's not going to work.
So okay, conscious of the time, sorry, this is a great discussion. And also thanks, Harish, for bringing up the digital inclusion webinar that we ran, which has gotten traction. There's been papers written and follow-ups happening. Shout out to Natalie Pang, who is in the chat. See her.
Hi, Nat.
And
Hello.
so okay, so
And Mayan for engineering for good.
and Mayan from
getting-
Engineering Good, yes.
Yeah.
So for those
Engineering
who are
Good,
interested
yes.
in the kind of things that Internet Society does, please stay on. We are ending this discussion, but we're going to have an AGM. If you'd like to get more updated on what's happening to what the projects that we are doing, lots of interesting stuff, and to continue
be
this
involved.
discussion,
Be involved.
yes, do please get involved. I let the panelists have a final thought of what we can do, what could be done to make things better. Okay, we now know things that are pretty crap, but what can be done to make things better moving forward? And everybody just your last thoughts on this matter before I hand it over back to Jay for the AGM.
For me, as
Let me go
always,
first. Oh, okay, go.
improve communication, improve, get out of your silo mentality. And that's an imperative.
So,
And
Yi-Ling,
personally, we talk a lot about trust, and I am thinking more about expectations rather than trust, because trust is amorphous and woolly, and sometimes there are too many emotions rolled up in it. I want expectations, and I want them prescribed, and I want to hold people to account when expectations are not met. Some clarity there would be good.
thanks, Yi-Ling. I think we can get behind that.
So if I may add to that before the last lawyer shows up, I would like to echo that, Yi-Ling, for suggesting that, and perhaps this is where I'm reaching out to all of us here on this webinar to help us craft a digital bill of rights. It is going to be work in progress. It's going to be work in progress for a long time. It may not go anywhere, but at least we have a start somewhere. And I will post on the chat a link to a talk that I am giving next Sunday, I believe, on the 21st, at the FOSS Asia. It's about digital bill of rights and what can we do. What are the things that we should probably look at? I have no answers to a lot of these things. I think I know what I know, and I would happy to put those thoughts into a talk and next week. And then if there's others who can help, especially lawyers and other interested parties, please let's work together. We have to have this as a groundswell. That's the best way forward. Otherwise, if it's going to be top down, there's going to be something else we're going to miss, because then we are not talking to each other. We are in silos. So that would be my pitch here.
Thank you, Harish. And now for the last lawyer.
Oh, last second lah. Other lawyer.
The other lawyer.
In the panel. The motto for my now defunct primary school was knowledge is power. And I think that's a good way to end off. If knowledge is really power, then giving people the knowledge of what you are doing with their data, what the risks are, that's giving to the people power. It's also giving knowledge to the policymakers on what they're doing to really think through. That is also power. One of the MPs talked in Parliament about what the sunlight of transparency, right? And view everything with total transparency. That improves what you're trying to do here. And I think that helps a lot. I mean, that's a good starting point. Thanks.
Thank you, Yi-Ling. Thank you, Harish. Thank you, Bryan, for all your insights, all your perspectives. Thank you, everybody in the chat, and Roland also for coming in. So thank you all for your very active participation. This has been a great session, great panel discussion. Looking forward to continuing online. Go to our isocSG.org website, and we'll be able to continue the discussion soon.
Ben, before you go, can I just make, there was a request by somebody on the chat to save the chat.
Yes.
I know you
Hello,
did say
Mayan.
you won't be publishing it, but yeah, was it Mayan? Yeah. So
Yeah,
that's a
chat is
request.
saved.
Yeah.
And so please stay back for those who are interested in what Internet Society does. Lots of interesting things like this, lots of interesting people to meet. Please stay back for the AGM. I hand you back over to Jay
Thanks, gents.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Ben.
guys.
Great panel.
Or stay,
Yeah.
I gotta bug out lah.
No, stay.
No, stay. Please stay. Don't go. We're down to 38 already. No, no.